you can't understand algebra or calculus if there's no numbers or letters. Algebra and calculus still exist without numbers and letters.
There would be no way to communicate them, though.
Yeah. So, like, this again goes to the idea that there's things outside of the periphery, outside of our current experience, that are impossible to communicate, and people try to communicate it, and it gets dismissed. Try to understand more things. Try to understand things that aren't readily understood.
Okay, yeah, this goes to like the Jung's candle thing, where it's like we shouldn't assume truth is a given and just needs to be uncovered. Rather, truth is something that has to be shown forth
By the light.
in infinite darkness, because we're just given so little. We kind of tend to assume that truth is just... Give me that back.
I'm having a sip, bitch.
No, I gotta get all this powder out of my mouth. Now, we tend to assume that truth is like a given, and if there's no truth, it's because lie is like a material substance that's covering the truth. You know? So like the truth simply is, and falsehoods cover up the truth. That's how we think about it. But there's like an alternate way to think about it. And that's given like by Jung's candle, essentially. So Jung's candle is a great visualization where we see that where Jung sees his psyche as in a dream, as a great black fog. And he sees himself holding a candle, which represents his like ego or consciousness. And that illuminates just a little bit of the fog. And there's more to it. There's the shadow bit, which is just great. But that's the important thing here, is that's another way of looking at truth. That truth is like something that... The truth is the candle. It's a thing that is material in itself that's hard to provide. That it's not the default. The default is just this fog. And truth is something that has to be built. And I think that's more true. That's the Jung's candle metaphor, and that's a way of looking at truth. And, that's especially definitively the case when we talk about prescriptive truth, which is like prescriptive truth, how to live your life, right?
Sure.
The way to live life. And prescriptive truth, I think it's best thought of like this. So there's like a fog of endless possibilities of how to interact with existence, because that's not a given thing. You don't just get to interact with existence any more than an animal does. That's all you're given. You're given the id. The id allows you to just interact with existence on an animal level. Everything else has to be socially conditioned, and that's a difficult thing.
Yeah, well, we have 9,000 years of social conditioning to figure that out for us.
So then I have this other metaphor that goes with this, where we see like, where I usually think of society as like a tower, where the ground is just the id. That's the baseline understanding of the world you get. And as you build a framework of how to interact with existence, that acts like a tower. It's like you're born on top of this tower. And this is really important to me, because it introduces two totally different perspectives on the nature of the tower. You have a conservative perspective, where you see the tower as something to safeguard and not fall off, because you look down and you can see you could fall off. And then you have and I mean temperamentally, not politically, but you have the temperamentally liberal perspective, where you see the tower as something that needs to be continued. So you need to keep building up.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Here's the thing: is you have to. This is the integration of the shadow, right? You can't decapitate your shadow, because what happens? The cell division of self, right?
Yeah, which you might call what's the word for that? I don't remember.
Division of self.
Okay.
So like, two sides you split, and it creates a giant shadow. So in the other half, he becomes harmless. So basically, like for example, with this new wave feminist shit, if you try and get rid of masculinity because it's part of the patriarchy, that's decapitation of the shadow. You have to integrate shadow. You have to integrate what we already have. You have to integrate lessons. You can't chop them off. It's evil, because what happens... Yeah, repression of the shadow. There we go. You repress that into some other part of you. It's like cell division, where two sides grow and the middle folds in. And the presented persona of you is a harmless rabbit. There's no evil to it. It's nothing. It's a paralyzed rabbit in a hole. There's nothing virtuous about this. It's just nothing. It's harmless. But what we forget is that there's also this division shadow behind it of total. That's true toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
That's what a school shooter is.
Yep.
It's a wimpy nobody who's harmless, and he has this shadow tail off of him that comes out in extreme violence. So
That's
you
true.
can't
That's
get rid of
very
like
true.
this is like seriously dangerous shit. This social contract.
That's a very good point.
become
Yeah,
truly
because if you take off yourself and say you can't, if you sublimate, there's a word for it too. But
Kids
if you
have to wrestle.
sublimate the beast inside of you, then you end up with this like, yeah. So, this was my point going into with the tower metaphor, is that here's my thing. I'm more liberal than at least Ted is about gender roles. And my point is that there is the second perspective. Yeah, we can say like, no, you can't just say masculinity is wrong and like just decapitate 5,000 years of learning how to interact with the world, because you will have serious psychological issues as a consequence. Because then you're just floating in the air when you do that. And when you float in the air, that's really dangerous. You can't be floating in the air. But at the same time, there's got to be upward movement. I think there's a lot of cause for upward movement right now, because fundamentally, industrialization has really changed the necessities of life. It's really changed how life functions.
I agree. Okay.
As time advances,
Yeah, there's more truth that exists.
more truths will exist.
Yeah.
But there are still a forms level that are
They're already there.
already there.
They're
Well, yeah,
just
we
in the
assume
dark
that.
still.
Yeah, we assume that there is a perfect truth that exists, and it's just covered up by the ultimate darkness.
Well, it depends. Like on this world, there's never going to be perfect truth, but in our
Yeah.
subconscious, there is going to be forms that we can
Yeah, you
agree
just have to
upon.
shine
There's these
light.
things
yeah,
that
but
we
we
can.
can assume there is a perfect truth, even if it doesn't exist. In
Well,
the world.
I know, but we have to
On the
form.
forms level.
We have to form the proper
Yeah.
like form or epistemologies in our own subconscious that allow us to advance in a society, but also ourselves on Earth, and that's all kind of the same thing. And they're complex ideas, and this is always happening in your subconscious. And I just think that's really
these
notable.
Ideas are so complex, you can't make these decisions.
You can't consciously make
interact
these
with-
decisions at
Yeah,
all.
no.
You have to do it in a subconscious area where God
Yep.
is omnipresent and helping you. Because remember, it's Earth, man. This is the land of Satan. This is not the fucking lands of God, unfortunately. It's a fallen world. I mean, you can read the Bible a million times, it's going to tell you that every time. At the end of the day, the place God is omnipresent is inside of you. God is not omnipresent on this earth. We have to project the omnipresent good onto the earth around us, because the earth around us is naturally going to decay to Satan.
Entropy.
Yep. So we have to project what's omnipresent with God.
Yeah, we are order, Craig. That's interesting.
I just don't like conflating goodness with order.
Yeah, he's
Fair.
right. I'm
Yeah.
not saying the word
Yeah,
order.
that's a
Yeah,
good
I know.
point.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
order, obviously, communism is a really distorted order.
Yep, I think order is not the same thing here. We've
Yeah,
had that
well,
discussion.
There's like good order.
They have some
Yeah.
relationship. I mean,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
early religions always conflated good and order,
Yeah,
but that was in societies where it was just them and barbarians.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right, it's easy to do. But you hear what I'm
The
saying.
devil eventually just like subverted order into like
Yep,
communism.
yep.
Which is fucking really insane. Like the word communism has lost its meaning because boomers have talked about it. Because there's a generational gap where the millennials didn't actually have to experience it, but the boomers did, and they're like, "Ah, dumb boomers." Communism is terrifying,
Yeah, it is.
It's extremely terrifying.
and it's not that far away. The idea that we'll be free forever. There's been 200 years of freedom ever.
I think the scariest thing about
I wouldn't
communism
be so
is
cocky. It's entirely too cocky to not worry about our freedoms being taken away every moment you're alive.
I think the really scary thing is collectivism. It's really been a trend in the 20th century, and it's still continuing to an extent, and it might just come back. Collectivism.
Define that word.
Collectivism is like defining defining your individual identity and your moral structure around an ideology, as opposed to like around a tradition.
Holy shit, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's crazy. Wow.
So like you can have it's like when you just abandon your old identities. You're no longer of a family, of a town, of a culture. You're no longer
you're an ideologue.
You're
ideologically possessed.
and then you just
Yeah.
It's a crazy term.
It's scary. Yeah, it is crazy.
You can see it as like an axial age phenomenon too, and that even happened a couple of times in the last axial age.
You can't let your old dichotomies rot and be subverted by a new, fresh dichotomy. That's kind of that being touched on that.
No, but you know what I mean by an axial age phenomenon? Because like we're probably in an axial age right now.
Oh.
Like, which is like where. So in the Greco-Roman world, it was like it was a very kind of like agnostic world. They kind of stopped believing in the Greek and Roman myths, and eventually Christianity happened, and that was like the end of it. It was like there was this period where they realized these old religions weren't working for them, and they started thinking in like humanist terms. And then they tried all these other religions, and there was like philosophers all over the world during this period. That was the classical period, right? And then we eventually kind of settled on Christianity in the West and Confucianism in the East and whatever, and then we returned to like being more religious. That's the Axial Age Theory, right?
Okay.
So then another theory you can extrapolate off of that is that we're kind of in another Axial Age now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we kind of are, man.
We're just completely re-examining our values, which means a lot of new values get generated, and you can see collectivism as a consequence of this, because like collectivism is trying to fill the moral vacuum. It's like, what if we were just collectivists? Either way, axial age, the Bible just can't just like be the founding. It doesn't work anymore.
No, but you can take moralities and test them through the Bible's lens, and that's a fucking pretty good 99 to 100% accurate lens to test ideas through, and test, lenses of morality.
It's like it's integration of the past, because like you make a new thing, and then rather than just having a new thing that's separate, you work it through the past. And Horus gives his eye to his father Osiris in the underworld.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Through the past.
And
that's an example of me doing that right now. Because that's what I just did. I just justified my current presupposition with a past story.
And we have to use the Bible because it's a pure lens.
Yeah, you can't just tear down your buildings. Like, people are fucking dumb. Oh, the Second Amendment was written 200 years ago. You dumb motherfucker. You think you're smarter than Thomas Jefferson, you fucking idiot? Yeah. Well, you don't think he's smarter than you? You want to think a little harder before you go 200 years ago? Did you know that Darwinism is how old?
Like 150 years.
150 years. The fucking fire was invented 20 million years ago. We're going to get rid of that. The steam engine was invented 100 years ago. It must be stupid. The idea that the Constitution has been objectively obliterated by time in 200 years written by the most genius men ever, that college-age liberals have figured this out in 18 years of existence, is retarded. So it's like this. If you look at two dudes from New York shooting the shit, oh, this is like this, and how about like that, and at one time like this. What are they doing? They're using their own culture to pick up on epistemological forms. They're describing things through a very narrow lens of their own culture. Works for them, but someone in China is going to be confused.
Yep.
So you have to zoom back so we can communicate more clearly.
And that's applicable to what you were just talking about.
Yeah, and everything. And by the way, it's a lesson. If you don't understand what someone's saying, it might be them, but it might be you. So try really hard.
Yeah.
So like essentially we derive and even speech itself is like we have internal maps, and those are the truest forms of our own ideas, but they're subjective. So we have like agreed upon modes of communicating ideas to each other.
Oh, that's crazy. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like we agree to like distill our idea into something that can be parsed in this like language that we've invented. And that means we can kind of communicate the idea to other people. And they might have to like fit it a little bit, but they can get the general concept really quickly.
You need not only the information to be presented to you, but also the right frame of mind or lens to look at it.
So you know how I said like people have their own maps of information that are unique to them, and they're kind of subjective. So people have agreed upon people have these agreed upon spheres of data that they agree upon, so that they can communicate ideas to each other, and that's like language and stuff, right? But that's an agreement. It's like a little, and it requires. You have to have agreed to that bit of knowledge, or you can think of it like you have to have sort of like. You can also think of it. Coding metaphors work really good here, because you can imagine like you have a way, and then you have a thought, and then it gets encoded in a certain file that can be transmitted. but in order to transmit it, you have to be able to unpackage the file.
Yeah, no, I
On
get
the
it.
other side.
Yeah. So like you have a flash drive that has X, Y, or Z program.
Yeah, and you can't plug it into your ear. You need a computer to
and
plug
then
it
you
into.
plug it in a Mac, and the Mac can't reciprocate with that type of audio file, and then the Mac can't
Yeah.
I was gonna say it like you can't hand someone a flash drive and they can't put it in your ear and expect to understand. You have to have, you have to have a computer to read it.